Hi everyone and welcome to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. We're at the last session of the day and super excited to have you joining us. Every day of Techweek at 4 p.m. we'll be showcasing 2 companies in each region who are innovating in a way that's truly good for the world. Today we shine a light on 2 Dunedin Medtech companies, be inspired by their stories and exciting impact on the future of our health sector. Joining us for this session is Paul Hanson, Economics Professor, Head of Department and co-inventor of 1,000 Minds, and Phil Wheeler, Education Manager at AD Instruments, not ADI. And hi guys, how are you?
Hi Sian, hi.
I'm doing good too. We've got a couple prezos for you so you can learn about what these awesome people do, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Awesome, thanks. Well, I'll just go through some slides as quick as I can. So, so 1,000 Minds software is all about decision making and a thing called conjoint analysis, which I won't talk about the latter thing too much, but I will talk about decision making. First of all, I should of course recognise or acknowledge that I'm just one of a small, but as they say, very agile team of developers and interface operators and academics like myself. Half of us are in Wellington and the other half are down here in Dunedin, but of course with the internet it's very easy to communicate. And I guess we're a pretty loose outfit too. We've got lots of friends and supporters over the years that have really helped us and continue to, so I like to pay acknowledgement to our great group. So here's what we do. In essence, 1,000 Minds is all about making decisions that involve prioritising something or ranking something or choosing from amongst different competing alternatives, and it's based on a technique from academia or operations research known as multi-criteria decision making, which, as the name implies, is about decisions that involve considering multiple criteria all at once. We're very active in the health sector, and you can see the list of things that on the screen there that we're involved with, and basically common to all those examples is we're ranking or we're prioritising or we're choosing from amongst a whole bunch of alternatives, which I've underlined there. So the first thing, probably the main area that we've done work on since 2003 as a company, is we prioritise patients who are on waiting lists in New Zealand for elective services. So the good chance that if you go to the public health system and you need a hip operation or a cataract or maybe an infertility treatment, something that's elective, you'll be prioritised using a system that was built using 1,000 Minds. But we do other things too. So a big issue in the health sector is deciding which pharmaceuticals and devices and procedures should be funded by Pharmac or the Ministry of Health, for example. So tools like 1,000 Minds are used for that. We've also done work with the WHO, the World Health Organization, to do with prioritisation of investments in research to do with infectious diseases, and so on and so forth. I won't go through them all there, but you can imagine in the health sector there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, so that's what our software helps people to do. Well, it's kind of interesting to think back 20 or so years. Of course, you won't remember this, Sian, but those of us who are a little bit older will. Back in the bad old days prior to 1998, and that was a seminal moment in New Zealand health system history, there were about 100,000 people on the waiting list, and our population in those days was about 4 million. So a lot of people were waiting for treatments, and you can see some quotes there sort of commenting on how unfair the whole system was, and that cartoon really captures the mood of the time. People were waiting for treatments and they were getting leapfrogged in the queue by other people, and this is where 1,000 Minds came out of, was trying to solve that problem. What's the right order for treating patients on a waiting list? So New Zealand really led the way. In 1998, that's when these things known as clinical priority assessment criteria, so I can't even read my own, but CPACs is the acronym. These were introduced in New Zealand in 1998 across pretty much all elective procedures, and on the screen there is an example, one from 1998, to do with aortic regurgitation. I don't know what that is, throwing up your aorta or something, but I was a recently minted PhD in economics in those days, and I knew nothing about health, and I still don't, but I did like numbers, and I looked at those sheets in front of us now, and I didn't know what the words meant, but the question I asked was, why do all those numbers that are used to prioritise someone, why do they all end in 5s or 0s? So the idea of a system like this is a patient comes in, They get scored on a whole bunch of criteria, and then the numbers, the weights, are added up to get a score out of 100, and then the patient is put into an order on a waiting list according to that score that they get out of 100. So you can see that it's really important, the numbers that go into giving us that score. And back in those days, most of them, as I said, were 5s and 0s. So I wondered, where do those numbers come from? Are there methods by which you could capture the relative importance that reflects how critical some of those issues are that a clinician would look at? And so, leaping ahead, I worked with my wonderful partner and dear friend Franz Ombler, who's in Wellington, and we invented what's become known as the paprika method. I won't go through the maths, you're lucky about that, but it ended up in lots and lots of patents, and it was kind of a big breakthrough, it turns out. And with Franz, who's a wonderful programmer amongst many other talents that he has, we created 1000 Minds software to answer that question that I just showed you before. Again, a very busy slide, but in essence, this is, on the left-hand side, the blue boxes are sort of capturing the process that you'd go through, or that 1000 Minds is used for with clinicians or with the Ministry of Health to create these systems for ranking patients. And there's a whole series of steps. It might take 6 months, and it's working with the clinicians who know all about the area, but the software enables the process to be run very, very smoothly and in a way that's transparent and can be verified, and it's got a lot of validity and things like that. Those are some screenshots that I've just included there, but it's a really comprehensive system and process. And since 2004, it really just took off. In New Zealand, there's a big list of the various elective services that have been sort of dealt with, if you like, by 1000 Minds to give these systems, and we've done other work too to do with the National Prioritisation Web Service. So again, just sort of the management behind the scenes of the waiting lists. And I said it before, but New Zealand really leads the way. Apparently we're good at rugby, but we're really good at this sort of stuff too. And the rest of the world has paid a lot of attention. And Canada in particular, the UK, I'm hoping that Australia in the next few years as well. Basically, systems that are similar to the New Zealand health system that have the same sorts of problems have really paid attention to 1000 Minds and the ideas that the ministry came up with. And a whole bunch of other applications that I sort of talked about just briefly before. That are on the screen there, but we haven't got time to go through. Why is the stuff so important? Well, we're not as smart as Mr. Spock there from Star Trek. Most of us are more like Homer Simpson. We have trouble making decisions. It's sort of more of a duh than a massive calculation. Believe it or not, there's lots of common mistakes that humans make in groups and individually. Again, this isn't supposed to be a lecture, I won't go through them, but so 1000 Minds really tries to solve this. And so anyway, we got into this and we suddenly thought, well, hey, isn't it interesting? Pretty much all systems that we face, or all problems that we face in life that involve ranking and prioritisation are very fundamentally the same as ranking patients. They all have those characteristics, some alternatives, some criteria, some weights, and some decision makers. So 1000 Minds has really branched out into lots and lots of different areas. Health, of course, which we're talking about today, but lots of other areas as well, and all around the world as well. So these are really just examples where 1000 Minds has been used commercially by organisations. It's been really interesting, really exciting. Oh, here's a bit of a boast. It's nothing compared to ADI instruments, but anyway, I'm just, David's got to try and stand up to Goliath sometimes. But we have had some pretty significant clients, both in the health field and further abroad, including the World Health Organization and including Google, actually, which was really exciting. Oh, I should probably cut this slide out, but here it is. So 1000 Minds, certainly we're a commercial organisation. We need revenue like every startup. We're more than a startup, but we're also very academically focused and IP focused as well. So we sort of think of it, a commercial structure as a three-legged stool. Each of those three legs is very, very important for the survival and the success of the company. And it also makes it really worthwhile as well. We need the money, but we also want to do good in the world. Oh, research outputs, here's the academic in me as well. So lots and lots of activities from academics around the world, PhDs and stuff, and this is good for business as well, but again, it's part of giving back. I think I'm almost finished. And patents, for a while we got right into getting patents if you haven't gone for a patent in your life, you really should try that. That's a great activity. I'm sort of joking half because it's really a lot of hard work, but we've had a lot of success in this space, which I think has been a good foundation for us commercially as well. And I think I'm done. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. I guess 2 questions that I have for you.
Sure.
One is, how big's the team?
5 people, yes. So
Cool.
pretty small, but very agile, as I said.
And then the second question I have is, New Zealand does have a lot of academics and scientists and whatnot.
Yep.
Can you tell me what it's like being an academic that's created a successful business that actually makes money?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to tell you the truth, it's been the joy of my life because something came out of the research that I started, and to think that you can have a positive real world impact rather than just writing for journals fills my heart with joy, and it's led to amazing connections with colleagues and with all sorts of people in the business world. So it's fantastic, but you're right, it's extraordinarily rare, and I think it's rare because it's actually quite difficult to do.
Yep. Do you have any advice for other academics that want to commercialise their research but might not know what the first few steps are to take?
I'm almost tempted to say don't. But I think the key is to work with really great people, so that's been my success. I've had the most wonderful colleagues and mentors and partners, and it would be impossible without those people, and that's what's made it so much fun as well. So I think the first step is find good people to partner with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. All right, we're going to go to the next presentation. You ready?
That would be me, I think so. Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to be, I hope you forgive me, I'm going to be a bit more esoteric in the sort of thing I'm talking about. So so I was sort of thinking that Techweek's about fostering growth and supporting New Zealand's technology ecosystem. The theme throughout is bringing the technology and bringing together those networks, boosting the signal and raising the technology community's collective voice and increasing the Kiwi tech profile overseas. And that resonates with me because I think there's an underlying drive across a large majority of technology businesses in New Zealand, which is to lower the barriers of entry in a particular problem domain and empower more people to achieve results. So in science, and I'm especially looking at the life sciences here, the quality of data acquisition and the availability and accessibility of research data are critical factors in the overall scientific method, and that has an impact on the quality of your results. So the design of experiments, the acquisition of data, and the management of that takes time and resource overhead. So curiosity and a need to answer the question why are at the core of all science, and that's sort of where AD Instruments aims to sort of contribute and step in. So we create simple, flexible tools to help scientists and educators record and analyse data quickly and efficiently. We support the scientific community with user-friendly software, specialised training options and high-quality solution-focused systems that give people confidence in their data and the power of their work. I thought I should probably do some introductions. So I come from an education family. Both of my parents were teachers, and I've been a music teacher for over 20 years now. And that background in explaining new concepts and bringing people on a journey of learning and helping everyone to move on one step at a time really framed a lot of my software development and ICT career. Technology and software is a natural fit with those goals too. So I've been working across a range of sectors and clients to help them understand their business and get the most out of their technology investments. The role I'm in now is a great mix of both of these ideals, bringing education and technology together to lower those barriers to learning for people in the life science sector. Our life science education products make education a more engaging and interactive and easily communicated experience so that students are able to achieve better results as they work towards careers in health and medicine science. And educators are able to see better outcomes both in terms of achievement results and in the time that they have available to invest in other ways. It's this potential that I find the most exciting about the technology sector generally. that systems thinking we can apply across those common ingredients of people, data and technology, and applying our knowledge to move our world forward, reaching large groups and discovering smarter, more innovative ways to address shared problems. So a phrase I've heard a lot is that there are no technology problems, there are only people problems, and technology should seek to empower people in solving those problems. And I really like that idea. That's where I see the future of our industry moving, and where I believe we should all be centering our decisions. What are the best outcomes I can deliver for the people surrounding this space? How can we ensure that they're represented and included and empowered through the technologies that we're offering? So that's a very sort of broad overview of sort of the AD Instruments picture that we've got.
Yeah, do you want to tell people how many customers you have?
Oh, customers. So I would, so working in the education sort of side of the business, there are two. We have research and education. So I'll be, the total pool of customers I'd probably get terribly wrong. We have sort of several hundred sort of key learning institutions in several different regions around the world, from North America, South America, Europe and England. And some of those places have sort of upwards of 1,000 students. So depending on how you frame the word customers, it's several thousand.
I heard that you have 30,000 scientists that use your platform.
Yeah,
which
across
is quite
the
impressive.
research as well. Yeah, it would probably be upwards of that number, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, what I wanted to know is being a music teacher would give you a really interesting way of teaching and educating in a different field, because you look at things slightly differently.
It does and it doesn't at the same time. So, I mean, obviously that's my personal background, and so I have my own sort of views on what I think works. But of course, this is we're sort of working at a tertiary level and in a very specific science. So, we have a team of instructional designers whose sort of core skill is centred around sort of optimal learning outcomes and ways to learn, and sort of how to interact with technology to sort of achieve that.
Awesome. Okay, a few questions here to continue our showcase. What are your growth plans for the future? You can start first.
Well, the plans are for the world. So when you're selling software, it's so scalable. We're really just limited by our own commercial ability to connect with customers, I think, and we're getting better and better at that. So outside the health sector in particular, there are just so many opportunities, because it's a fundamental question as to what should people do, and our tools try to help with that. And in fact, we're part of an industry. The industry is pretty large and it's growing, so we're hopeful to grow a lot, actually.
I don't want to make a joke, but you kind of dropped yourself in this one.
Yeah.
Do you use your own software to prioritise which customers you should go after?
We probably don't. No. Yeah, we should, shouldn't we?
Probably.
We should.
Probably.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm totally
No,
putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's actually an old joke in the field, but yeah.
Right, gotcha.
It's
Sorry
a good
about
one.
that.
No, it's good.
What are your plans of growth for the future?
Yeah, I mean, like Paul said, world domination would be great. We're specifically sort of targeting the Chinese market as our next sort of strategic sort of step. The sort of market, both China and India will be sort of key market areas, I think, for us in the future. Obviously, that sort of comes with its own challenges, but we see a lot of real potential there.
What sort of support do you think you're going to need to expand into India and China? Because usually software companies from New Zealand typically go like Commonwealth in the US.
Yeah, I mean, so we're leaning on support from a number of different places. We've got a special advisory group that we've sort of put together and engaged with in China specifically. We've leaned a lot on advice from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and continue to do so. So we'll sort of try, we sort of lean also on specialists from Amazon Web Services that we leverage heavily. And so, we'll sort of gather up as much information and talk to as many people as we can.
Awesome. What about you? What sort of support do you use?
Well, we've had help from NZTE over the years, not recently. I guess we're kind of doing it organically. We're in a much smaller scale than AD Instruments, definitely, but I think it's getting it done ourselves, and it's through the internet. It's having a great presence on the internet and being easily found, and providing a really good service. I think that's the secret to what we're doing. Yeah.
Can you tell me what's going on in Dunedin? Because I joked before about there being something in the water, but when I discovered all the innovation going on here like a few years ago, I was like, wow, this has to be the most innovative place in New Zealand. No one knows about it, and the thing is, you've got lots of people just working in their buildings and having an easy commute, and then your customers are global, so you kind of skip the rest of New Zealand and just go straight out to the world.
Yeah, you're born global, you sort of got to be, really. What's happening down here is sort of like the music scene in the 80s and 90s. Is it the weather? Is it the beer? Is it, I don't know what it is. And everyone sort of knows everyone. Like, we knew each other, didn't we? Well, we know each other, but we wander into something and you go, oh, I remember you, sort of thing. Yeah. And there's sort of that environment of helping and working together. That's how it seems to me.
No, I agree. But let's test the beer theory as well, though. But yeah, I think every sort of major centre around New Zealand has its own sort of culture and its own sort of ecosystem. And Auckland, Wellington obviously have theirs. I think ours is significant and different in that it's very close. We all know each other, so we build on each other's experiences, and we're able to sort of collaborate a lot more effectively. And the like Paul said, the nature of sort of web-connected places in itself just sort of removes a lot of those geographic barriers that might have existed sort of even
the internet is the key, I think. 15 years ago, it just would have been impossible. Would we have got on a plane, pulled on a suit, or you guys might have, but we certainly wouldn't have, and gone to deal with a customer. But I'll pull on a shirt, get the Skype looking good with a decent background, and we're on, right?
Yeah.
And the internet just makes that possible, and deliver it and send the invoice, through Xero, and you're up there competing with the real big ones, yeah.
Okay, let's have a look. This is a big question, but what's the ultimate hope for the impact of your organisation and what it will have on the medical sector in 2050?
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
I guess the hope for us is that people make really much better decisions than they have been, that the right people get the right operations, and that the limited resources available in the health sector are used as effectively as possible. And that's really what we're trying to help organisations with. Yeah,
I don't know. It's 2050 seems a long way off. In internet years, that's pretty much the same as dog years. That's eons away. But I mean, in the near future, we sort of see challenges sort of around ageing populations. We've sort of see opportunities for expanding expanding our user base into sort of less privileged areas. I think the shape of teaching is under sort of new and unprecedented challenges as well in terms of its resourcing. So we sort of look to those sorts of areas and as our sort of targets to sort of try and resolve problems.
Something I'd like to know is on the kind of prioritising patient side, if a patient isn't correctly prioritised, like how severe can the impact of that be?
Oh, they'll in some cases die.
Yeah.
And that was really the impetus for us back in the late 90s. There were some really famous and politically damaging examples of patients who weren't treated and who lost their lives, say a heart operation, and so the Ministry of Health and politicians at the time were massively under pressure to try and fix it. And it really came down to, they had the criteria right, but they didn't have the right weights, and so that was again where my interest came from. So very important.
Super interesting. And our last question is going to be, what has been your favourite project or case study to date?
Hey, I think that it's actually going to be one of my personal favourites. Is probably going to be one of the projects we currently have on the go, which is possibly a bit of a so it's around the business intelligence and understanding our products better, and sort of looking at where we can sort of optimise and sort of deliver better outcomes for our learners. We're working across so many different sort of innovations on a regular basis. It's hard to sort of just peg off one and sort of go, yeah, that one.
And for me, I think it was going to Geneva and working with the World Health Organization, prioritising diseases that become antibiotic resistant, to get a list together so that drug companies and universities could decide where to put their money to come up with new antibiotics and treatments for it. that was just a wonderful experience, and it seems so incredibly important. You know, potentially tens of millions of people are going to die if these diseases aren't treatable, and that's a real risk in the future. So to be a small part of that it just felt really important, you know, and really good.
Is that like with Ebola and
yeah?
And
well, it was more like pneumonia, and can you believe it, gonorrhea, all these diseases that we don't even think about nowadays, but our grandparents died of.
Yeah.
And it's because of penicillin and things like that, but they're losing their power. So the question was, well, which ones should they be funding research into?
Yeah.
And so we were we're the tool to help experts work on that problem.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was really great.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep doing what you're doing and saving the world. Thank you for tuning in to Techweek TV. That's it for the day, and we'll see you tomorrow back here at 9 a.m.